Are you a fan of space opera? Do you Are you a fan of Star Wars? Perhaps Star Trek? What about other potential space opera titles? We could begin, of course, with Frank Herbert's classic Dune. We could talk about Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. We could talk about the more feminist and intersectional writings of Ursula K. Le Guin in the Hainish cycle with her Left Hand of Darkness. We could look at more recent additions to the space opera genre, like This Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Of course, there's always the classic Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Maybe you've heard of Samuel R. Delaney's Babel 17. And of course, there's the forgotten classic, The Fifth Head of Cerberus by Gene Wolfe. So, okay, so space opera is a term that has a complex definition. So it emerges as a phrase to classify the original pulp science fiction stories written in the beginning of the 20th century that are reflective of a intergalactic space travel and adventure sense of narrative propulsion. What I mean by that is space opera emerges as a genre describing adventures in the galaxy. The name needs to be understood within a broader context. In the early years of radio, as well as the years of pulp fiction magazines, advertising had less regulation than it does today. And that meant that brand companies were able to finance the production of certain film or television products. The most famous example of this, of course, would probably be Ronald Reagan, the star of the General Electric theater program, which was run by a notorious capitalist firm. And it's clear that there can be other such instances, one being the instance of the soap opera. And what is the soap opera? We know the soap opera today to be defined as a hyper melodramatic narrative, a romantic story, usually predicated around some sort of carnal lust or something. That's not what the actual phrase is meant to be defined by. The phrase comes from the early days of radio, and it was used to describe the fact that these highly melodramatic renditions, radio plays, were financed by soap companies like Dove Soap or other popular consumer brand household soap companies. And so soap operas emerged on the radio almost a century ago or more in that context. And the use of the phrase opera to describe radio products and radio productions is extended to further kinds of drama, such as the cowboy and Indian genre, the Western as it is emerging on the radio with programs such as The Lone Ranger. And those are called cowboy operas or horse operas. And so further along emerges out of that the notion of having pirate operas. And Doc E. Smith, the author who we're going to be discussing under consideration in the next several months, he formulates space opera. He borrows many genre conventions from those aforementioned other opera romances, and he develops them and deploys them into the conventions that we know today with some of the aforementioned novels that I brought up at the beginning of this video. So I wanted to take the opportunity to read this series, the Lensman series, because it's called the original and first space opera. It's said to be the source of all the genre conventions. And it boasts of being voted only second to the aforementioned Foundation series by Asimov as the greatest space opera in the history of the genre. Now, initially, because the books were first published in the 1920s, they've now begun to enter into the public domain. And so I thought, as a filmmaker and a science fiction fan, wouldn't it be interesting to see if it were possible to make a adaptation of the Lensman series, or perhaps maybe its first novel. So I obtained a copy of the Lensman anthology that is for sale on Amazon, and after reading the first several pages, it becomes very obvious that this is not a very good story in terms of writing or prose style. And furthermore, as one examines the concepts and overall tropes that are being promoted by the author, Edward E. Doc Smith, it's evident that there's a lot of problematic eugenicist and racist theories that are embedded in its concepts about the notion of space exploration and the racial hierarchies and the ways that those are expressed via the notion of the alien and alienation and to be an alien. So it seemed rather haphazard to attempt adapting that to the screen without significant revision. But then I thought, wouldn't it be interesting instead if I did this in the form of a news documentary? So this can be done on several levels, and over the next couple months in this program called the Lensman Tapes, I am going to be moving forward with a set of efforts to examine this series in the context of my journalism. I'm going to have scholars, I'm going to have media critics, and I'm going to have their personalities participate in the creation of this Lensman project. And so the Lensman Tapes are going to be a different and unique type of space opera. And that is all I got. And thanks very much for your time. So, in the forthcoming months, keep an eye out and we'll see what we can do. In the meantime, have a good one, guys.